Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Hi. 3, 2, 1, what?
Let's go. We're on the air.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, always accompanied by the very lovely Jackie Bondanza. And this is actually our first episode since the COVID-19. So we pre-recorded the last 5 or 6 episodes. And this is our first one, and we wanted to talk a little about that. We're alive and well, thankfully.
Yep.
So, Jackie, what do you want to say? This is our first episode. As I said, we're still in the middle of it. We're in the middle of this pandemic.
Right. Well, luckily, we're moving through it. And, so we just want to talk about our business, Hounds Town USA business, how we've gotten through the past, 6 to 8 weeks, what we've done for our franchisees, our customers, and kind of our perspective on how this has affected everyone, including our dogs. So the focus is going to be really, and I know we've done a couple of live town halls on Facebook Live, just to help people get through some of the behavior challenges they're having with their dogs, because, our dogs' lives are as affected as ours have been throughout this whole thing. And, being home and being under quarantine and changing a dog's routine can obviously really affect their behavior. So we're going to touch a little bit on that, talk about what people can be doing at home to kind of ease this transition back into what is hopefully everyone getting back to work.
Yes. So that's pretty much sums up what we're going to talk about. I promise everybody I'm not going to use the word mammalian brain from now on. So if I have to use the word, I'm going to be the dog brain. I'm never using that word again. I got a lot of criticism about that.
From who?
Different people. It was repetitive, and I do understand a lot of the things we talk about are repetitive. And the reason for that dogs are simple. So we're constantly trying to talk in simple terms. But let's talk about COVID-19 and social distancing. So ironically, through all of this, so a couple of things. Me personally, of course, I don't minimize it, and the safety of my employees, my customers are always paramount. However, the COVID-19, it just didn't affect me at all, frankly. I mean, I kind of guess been social distancing for a while. These are things I try to stay 6 feet away from human beings to begin with, number one. And number two, I washed my hands and I don't sneeze in people's faces. So a lot of the lessons learned here. And one of the things, so it hasn't affected me that much, meaning I've traveled, I've supported our franchisees. Some people kind of looked at me as though I was minimizing this crisis and I wasn't taking it serious. I was taking it serious. And I followed the rules and the laws from the very beginning. So from the beginning, there was no mask. Then there was mask. Then you could travel. You can't travel. Whatever the laws were, I didn't secretly go out at night and parachute into Henderson, Nevada. Right? I just followed the law.
Okay. What is this? Where are we going with this?
Well, so our business, Hounds Town Doggy Daycare, is an essential service.
Right.
And the bottom line is we've been, with dogs, we social distance. That's part of what we do.
Right. So the nature of our business is social distancing. In any of our facilities, we don't really have any more than 2 or 3 or 4 employees at max working in our facilities at any given time. So I think the routine of our operations at our locations didn't change that much. Of course, we saw some decrease in, customers coming in the door as their work routines and their work life changed dramatically overnight. But we've really worked through it day to day with our franchisees and with our customers. And I think one of the main ways that we did that was just kind of pivoting and turning to our customers and saying, okay, what do you need? How can we support you? We have so many frontline healthcare workers as customers, nurses and doctors and, people that you wouldn't think are considered essential workers that still really needed pet care through all of this. So we really had to quickly focus on really 2 things, right? Supporting our customers and our staff at our locations. And then for all of our franchisees who were in the middle of build out, like you said, we didn't have the luxury of just saying, okay, we're not traveling for 2 months. So of course we took
Right.
safety precautions, but we still, had to get out there and keep our
Right.
businesses going.
Life went on. Life went on during this whole thing. And of course, we've had issues with family members who got corona and so forth. So everybody's been touched by this. But I think the most important thing, and one of the things I was most concerned about from the very beginning, was the health situation. But the bigger thing is the economic situation. So as you quite correctly said, it didn't take work. We just we shifted we started assisting healthcare workers, frontline workers. Frontline workers are sanitation workers. Everybody is a frontline worker. Everybody that goes to a cafeteria every day and opens their the hospital cafeteria. So there is so many essential service workers, but they're not all in gowns in hospitals. They are also, just as I said, without the sanitation workers, we would have garbage. We would have other illnesses associated with garbage left around. So our business, interactive doggy daycare, is also deemed an essential service for that exact reason. And we didn't have to make many accommodations, because if you think about what happens on a daily basis, ironically, dogs are on what? Generally, a 6-foot leash. We only have one customer or two customers in our lobby at any given time. We're not, as Jackie said, we have 2 or 3 employees. We're always in different sides of the building. So we didn't have to make any kind of real, as far as our day-to-day operations. Right. We respectfully wear our masks when we're in the lobby. But we're always 6 feet away from everybody. So it's never, including...
So it was easy for our customers we wanted to make it as easy as possible for our customers to feel comfortable coming into our lobbies, and just make it seamless for them so that they could focus on getting to work. And it was actually really quite surprising to me, at least, to realize all of the customers that we have that are essential workers that still needed pet care, even when we're on this 100% workforce lockdown, which we still are in all of the states that we're operating in, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. We're still on 100% workforce lockdown. And luckily, we've seen a lot of our customers start to come back over the past couple of weeks. Also, as they realize that their dogs are getting restless at home, just like they're getting restless at home, their dogs really need their routine. They need to see their friends. So in the past couple of weeks, we've really seen the numbers start to pick back up, which is obviously a huge relief for everybody. And so it's been interesting to see what has gone on with our business over the past 2 months or so.
Right. But the point to emphasize, I know, like me, I go around and I try to figure out why one thing is essential. A liquor store is essential, but a dry cleaner isn't. So people sometimes are scratching their heads, and I can't speak for why a liquor store is essential and a dry cleaner is not essential. But I would say this about doggy daycare. This is why doggy daycare is essential. And for those of you who are at home, you might not see the need for it because you have your dog there. But if you have to go to work for 12, 13, 14 hours, this reminds me of 9/11, where, at that time, the frontline responders were police, firemen, etc. But they had to go to work. They didn't even know when they were coming home, sometimes if they were coming home.
Right, and that's what a lot of our customers now that are nurses have said. They've said overnight that their workload has changed drastically, and they're now working in the hospital 14, 16 hours a day, and they leaned into us here at Hounds Town even more.
Right. Well, it was a necessity. Yeah. So if you have a dog at home, obviously you can't leave it unsupervised or uncared for 12 or 13, 14 hours. Right. So again, that's the simple explanation why Hounds Town is an essential service. Because right now, 80% of our customers today are, in some way or another, they have to go to work. They're essential.
And even we have a lot of customers who are teachers. They're still, this was a huge struggle for them and a huge adjustment to have to now go and teach kids online and digitally. So we've spoken to a lot of them, over the past couple of months, and they didn't have time to focus on even though they're home, they didn't have time to focus on their dog or provide the dog the attention that the dog needed. So,
that covers that. That's why we're essential.
Right.
All right. What else you got for today's
episode? So let's talk a little bit about what we did already, kind of about what we have done at Hounds Town over the past 2 months for some of our customers. So pretty quickly, Hounds Town was founded 20 years ago, right before 9/11, and it was really founded. it was the core of the Hounds Town customer is a first responder, right? So you're
Well, working people, maybe not, we put these definitions, first responders. Like I said, one of the things, even back then, very frankly, I wasn't criticized, but obviously police, fire, and military, that's their job to be first responders. That's their jobs. But janitors, cafeteria workers, they still went to work, and they died at 9/11. They died at ground zero. So they may not have gotten the status of first responders or essential workers, but they were equally in the mix. So kind of like, as you said, the people that come to Hounds Town are working people.
Right.
They're
just
not
the
wealthy.
average working person.
Right. That has to work.
We have a pretty heavy focus on what we call first responders. 20 years ago, that was police, firefighters. Today, it's now morphed into, right now, nurses and pharmacists and janitors and grocery store workers. And it's amazing the amount of people that come and use Hounds Town that have those occupations, right? So we have tried to help support them. We rolled out what we called a COVID-19 marketing plan, where we had 6 weeks of specials and discounts and offers, really focusing heavily on the healthcare worker. So we did a pretty heavily discounted daycare and boarding special for essential healthcare workers. And we also did, we kind of brought back what we call the Fresh Air Fund. So a bunch of our Long Island locations went out and took dogs from local shelters that we have partnerships with, and we brought them into our locations. We have more space since we did not have as many dogs boarding these past couple of months. So here at Hounds Town Ronkonkoma, we had Leo from the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter, and we had Zara from the Town of Brookhaven Animal Shelter. You worked with them, did some behavior work, and they've both since been adopted, which is, which is a really positive, obviously, aspect about, everything that's been going on in the past 2 months. So those are just some of the things that we've been focusing on here at Hounds Town to get us through these past couple months. And now we're moving back into a more normal routine. But I think we should talk a little bit about how quarantine has affected dogs behaviorally. You always talk about the spring is a time for behavior challenges. A lot of our customers experience behavior challenges with their dogs in the spring anyway. So now that's kind of, we're adding to it with this whole coming out of quarantine. So how do you think that this is affecting, is it going to affect animals, dogs in the next couple of months?
Right. So as we always talk about, any change of environment or weather, everything affects the behavior of a dog. It affects our behavior. So the springtime affects our behavior because we're out more, we're interacting more. And that's the same for the dogs. Now their activity levels are higher. So everything that changes affects dog behavior. So dogs are very actually well equipped to self-quarantine because they're denning pack animals. So they're very easily they're not going to be affected as much as we are because dogs don't think about spring as a time to go bicycle riding or boating or sailing. Their life, they den, they stay home. So it's us humans that kind of get them out of balance by, and then when we go back to work, that's going to affect them because we've overdone the denning. We haven't separated from them. So we went from going to work for 8 to 10 hours a day to being home with the dogs and your children 24 hours, 7 days a week. Yeah. So naturally, those behaviors are going to be missed when you go back to work, and you have to take that into consideration.
Right. So Steve, one of the owners of the Hounds Town Bergen location, recently did an interview with NewJersey.com, I believe, and the topic was separation anxiety and how the quarantine is going to affect. Another positive thing is a lot of people adopted dogs over the past 2 months, which is fantastic. But what we need to consider is the well-being of those dogs when their owners now, it's a month or two later and their owners are getting ready to go back to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, or even if they're working from home and you don't necessarily have the time to exercise your dog or socialize them while you're at home. So he talked about the importance of addressing separation anxiety and things you can do now in your home. Obviously, we promote bringing your dog to Hounds Town for socialization and exercise in a real natural pack environment, which is, of course, what dogs need. But can we talk a little bit about what people can be doing at home right now to help address help prevent separation anxiety.
Of course. And what we talk about always in any situation is balance. So if you have to balance out the dog, and Steve actually gave very good, sensible advice. Start weaning your dog and children off of you. If you think you're going back to work in a week or 2 or 3, don't just wake up on Monday morning and disappear for 8 hours. As Steve said, just go in another room. Stop being, you have to detach with love, as we say. Detach with love. So the dog needs to go outside and run around 15, 20 minutes a day, but we don't have to be up each other's butts 24 hours a day. So go in another room. Stop, as we always say, as weird as it is, don't look, talk, or touch. Stop engaging every minute of your life. And the truth of the matter is, most people, I know this from my own family, you're not doing it with your children. They're in their rooms playing video games, and everybody's doing their own thing. It's just the dog that is constantly being consumed by the emotion of the humans. So just slowly detach with love. Go out to go for a walk around the block. Go sit in the garage. Go sit in the basement. Let the dog give him his own time, because that's what's going to happen. Right. And this is where the anxiety of separation becomes, when we do it so quickly and erratically. So it's just important to wean them off of your being.
Right. And at home, in our home at least, we use dens, crates. Our dogs are used to going in their dens. They sleep there at night, and then when we go out, they also stay in the den. So it's, even though you're home, you might be home 24/7, it's still good to use the den, use the crate for 1, 2, 3 hours at a time during the day. If you're going to work in your office for 2 hours, you have to be on a phone call. Use that opportunity to separate from the dog, have him go place in his den, stay there for an hour or 2 while you're on a call, and then come back out after a time period and re-engage with the dog. So that will help get the dog set up on a routine that is not connected to being connected to you 24/7.
So normally in the springtime, as Jackie said earlier, we're talking about the change in environment, and dog bites increase exponentially. So I know I can almost set my calendar that in the spring I'm going to get calls from attorneys and from customers where their dog bit somebody because they've been home all winter barking out the window, and then springtime comes, and then obviously animals start to appear, the squirrels, the birds. So the whole environment becomes animated. And then for a dog who spent 3 or 4 months quarantining, so to speak, that's a long time in a dog's life, because they're maturing rapidly, right? So for us, it's 3 or 4 months. It seems like an eternity. For a dog, it literally is like 2 years.
Right.
So the dog goes from maybe a year old to a year and a half old, or 2 years old, in that psychologically. So then when they get out the front door and they've been barking at squirrels, or they've been barking at a car going by, now they're going to have an opportunity to act on that.
Right. And then compound that with, leash walking and leash aggression that can really just accelerate this problem. So every year we do get a lot of calls.
And there's another behavioral issue that people don't even realize is masks. So for dogs, back just normally your dog may have reacted to a person with a hat or a beard or glasses. Now people's faces are exposed. So I'm already getting calls for people growling or barking or biting at what they think is a family member or something, but the person is literally masked. Dogs rely on understanding facial features of different things, so different people and so forth. So it's very important, if your dog is changing their behavior, growling or barking or something, just think of what it is. And it could be something as simple as a mask.
Right. Yeah, that's true too, because everything looks different. Everything looks different to the dog. And I've seen it as we, kind of drive to work every day. Everybody's out and walking, and there's so much in the environment for the dog to react to. People and bicyclists and people in masks and other dogs, and it's like kind of can sometimes it can completely unbalance the dog very quickly.
Right. From a simple thing that we take for granted. We take for granted masks. We know why people are wearing masks. But I don't know how much time we have. But something also very interesting that came about now in England, they're training dogs to detect COVID-19 before other technology, which is kind of interesting. Whether it'll ever happen, I'm not really convinced that it'll be reliable. But the fact of the matter is, Dogs have been doing that, detecting cancer, detecting odors way before. And the reason is that when you're infected with something, whether it's cancer or this COVID, an infectious disease, it changes your odor, your body odor. That's how dogs detect it. So if you're epileptic, or diabetic, I mean, I've been talking about this forever.
Right.
So when you have these conditions, your body emits a different odor. And to a dog, it's very simple to understand.
Right.
But don't be surprised if a dog could be detecting COVID-19 in your family, honestly, without you even realizing.
Right.
If his balance is off. And
the dog is just reacting to
the different odor. So
right.
if 7 family members are fine and 1 family member, so you'll watch, this is not my imagination, they're doing this now. And we've trained dogs to detect, as I said, epilepsy, diabetes, all kinds of disorders. So it's going to be interesting to find out. But I think the underlying arching message is anytime something changes, you might have a dog at home that growls at your brother-in-law and you don't know why. It might be because he's alcoholic or he has he has drugs in his system that you just don't smell. You're unaware of it, but the dog is completely aware of it.
Right. So we have to take all these things into consideration when, people call and say, my dog's lunging at, a bicyclist driving by. There's so many different things that could be going on for the dog that I think it's such a big disconnect between what is actually probably happening and what the owner just has the capability of understanding. So we always deal with this gap, right? This gap in knowledge and this gap of true understanding of what's actually going on in the dog's head and how to fix it for the dog.
Right.
That's always our challenge.
Well, it's challenging because we're intelligent, and it's hard to put ourself in the place of a dog because you don't smell the aroma in your house. You don't smell the ingredients in that you're cooking, and dogs do understand these things. So dogs react to changes. They're not big changes, they're subtle changes, and we react to big changes. And our brain can rationalize everything that we're doing. Dogs are the same always. So now might be this new odor. First of all, 2 things could be happening. There's this new odor in our environment called COVID-19. And this is scientifically proven that the dogs are detecting that. And we're masked now. So up until now, I would get a call and say, Jesus, my dog just bit my brother-in-law. He's an electrician. And I'd be like, they couldn't understand it. But what they don't understand is just because the dog knows your brother-in-law, the electrician, they don't know your brother-in-law when he's carrying a pipe in his hand. Because the pipe in his hand now is a completely different creature. It's no longer your brother-in-law. It's a creature that they start to growl and bite. So electricians are contracted. They're getting bit all the time because they just by putting their little tool belt on now changes the whole physical image.
Right, and
of
the
that
dog doesn't have the ability to say, "Oh, this is my uncle.
Right.
He's just putting a tool belt on." The image changes for them, and they have to react to it. And we've done this experiment with our own dog, Clyde. Remember when we were sitting in the kitchen and you had that raccoon hat?
Right.
So Mike was sitting in the kitchen, petting the dog. The dog was obviously completely fine, and then he picked up this squirrel cap or something, and he put it on, and the dog started growling and barking at him. And then he would take it off. The dog would stop. He'd put it on. The dog would react again.
Right.
So
just take that, what I think Jackie was just saying, take these subtle things into consideration. Masks. This is new. There was a sailor that just went out to sea for 4 months. He was out to sea for 4 months, and he came back into California recently. He didn't know what the hell was going on. People were walking around with masks. So our society has changed a lot. And to think that the dogs are going to understand these changes, including everything we discussed, the fact that we're home denning all the time, 24/7, that we're wearing masks and we're social distancing. These are all kind of weird things that dogs are going to have to kind of get on the same page. Adapt to.
And what we've heard from some of our customers is, and obviously we're proponents of this, but dogs that were used to coming to Hounds Town 5 days a week before owners, before this happened, the more the owners have kept the dogs in their routine, the more balanced the dogs seem to be. Even if the dog can't come 5 days a week, if the owner's still sending the dog twice a week through this, it's just helping the dog recognize some of his some of his routine. And dogs are creatures of habit, and I think they need, even though our routine has changed, we have the ability to adapt. Dogs don't necessarily have that, right?
Right. And the nice part is nothing is new to us. We've been through this many times. So during Hurricane Sandy, people stayed home. They didn't come to doggy daycare. Then there were behavioral problems with the dogs. They start chewing, peeing, pooping in the house. Things, because their ritual was so turned upside down. So we're kind of used to this. And, dogs do need this outlet. They need the outlet, just like your children. Your children are, the younger ones, 3 or 4 year old kids that don't have the ability to do sophisticated things like going online on computers and stuff. So they need the interaction of other children. And this is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to represent a problem, because little children that have been kept home for 3 or 4 months without going out and playing and getting knocked down and learning how to play games, I think there's going to be other social ramifications for it. But I think that, as I said, this is nothing new for us, because we are so simple, and that's the point. This is the outlet for dogs. The dogs just come here, and they don't have to, they just get it simple. And you can actually watch the pressure come off them. Agreed. When they come into our lobby and go into one of our playrooms, you can see their tails come up, the anxiety of trying to figure out where they're going, what's going on. And
we've had a couple customers who have said that they think their dog, now that the customer is home a lot, they think that they notice the dog is picking up on their anxiety and their kind of, disorganization at home, which is probably true. It's happening. Another reason why it's important to create that separation from you and the dog and allow the dog to continue in his own routine as much as possible.
Yeah,
because dogs do pick up on things.
Of course, just our children. I'm seeing young children now. We take this for granted, what we see on TV. But I've run across 10, 11-year-old kids. They're petrified because they all they hear is about death and so forth. They can't process that. So we project that on people, the news media, right? Everybody's hearing about people are dying if you go outside. And obviously we have to teach kids safety, but dogs completely don't understand one thing that's going on as 5 or 6 year old children do.
Right.
So it's really...
It's more difficult. It's more difficult for them. Okay. And I think, we wanted to talk too quickly about the coronavirus and the potential effects that it would have on a dog. So far, there's been no studies that prove at all that this can affect dogs. But of course, infectious disease does affect dogs. We have kennel cough and canine influenza and other things, just like we experience in humans.
At the end of this crisis, which it will end, of course, we're going to see, as I said to Jackie, we've been dealing with infectious disease since we opened. So since we opened, as we always say, we've taken care of about 1.5, 2 million dogs. And there are infectious diseases, almost very similar to the human flu. There's canine influenza and there's Bordetella, which is another form of a flu that infects the upper respiratory system of a dog. So people feel that they get the Bordetella vaccine. Just now we're looking for a vaccine for the coronavirus, which there isn't any right now. But even when there is, there's different strains of influenza. So the Bordetella vaccine that all our dogs are required to get, we still have outbreaks here and there where a very small percentage of the dogs, it maybe 1 or 2 or 3% will get it.
Right, and that's a very contagious respiratory disease in dogs.
Exactly.
Literally, it's airborne. Right. It can travel. It sits on surfaces, but
like the coronavirus, 95% of the dogs that get kennel cough, it goes away by itself. There's really no cure. The vets.
And there's only a certain small percentage of dogs who will actually get it, even though they're exposed to it.
Of course.
So it's most prominent in the spring and the fall when the seasons are changing, right?
That's true.
So last fall we had an outbreak, quote unquote, here. And I think maybe we had 15 or 20 of our regular dogs. We have 75, 80 dogs that come regularly a day. Maybe 15 of them or so were affected by it. Ironically, the dogs that come most frequently build up their immune system to these respiratory illnesses, just like kids that go to kindergarten. a dog may come down with it once or twice in his life, but once he's been exposed to it, the more he's exposed to it, the less at risk he actually is. So we are always monitoring these developments in dogs, and of course keeping our facilities completely as sanitary as we possibly can.
Right. So unfortunately for the few people, right, so for the dogs that get it, that is almost a vaccination for it. So if we have a young dog, 3-4 months old, that's why they get it, because their immune system isn't being developed, and now they're interacting with other dogs. So it's possible they're going to get Bordetella, kennel cough. Once they work through it, and it lasts for about a week or so, then they're pretty much immune to it unless a different strain comes out. So as Jackie said, we have dogs in our playroom. You could have one dog that's infected with Bordetella and sneeze in another dog's face. That dog, if it's a 3, 4, 5-year-old dog who's been coming and interacting all the time, they just don't get it. It doesn't happen. So it's not like 100% of the dogs get it. And it's so my point is, we've been dealing with infectious illness for a very long time. Fortunately, knock on wood, about 10 years ago, the canine influenza was supposed to come and wipe out a large percentage of dogs, and that never really came to fruition. Although we took necessary precautions for it, it just never happened. So
but yeah, this is part of the pet care, and but dogs are social pack animals. So the suggestion that dogs should social distance and they should be removed from what is their nature, which is interacting in a natural pack environment, is what is not taken into consideration is the negative effect or consequence that psychologically could have on a dog. So
and physically.
I think that it's difficult to project what the recommendations are for us humans onto dogs. So we are always advocating for the best interests of the dog here at Hounds Town. We're always, monitoring that and really being the advocate for what is the best for, the canines in general. And, that we take that role very seriously here. So,
but the best thing, just like children have to start interacting with other children for their immune system. This is herd immunity. These are all real things. I'm not saying we'll listen to what the scientists say. Of course they are. But if we isolate your children from social interaction at all, and you don't want them to scrape their knee or play and get dirty, they're never going to be properly socialized. And the same thing, more importantly, goes for dogs. Dogs are natural social pack animals that require the interaction, not only for their psychological well-being, but their physical well-being to develop an immune system. And if you isolate them...
dogs they're literally born in packs. Unlike humans, they're not born 1 or 2 at a time. They're born in litters. So they need that. They need the support of a pack to be... really to be for their whole life, to live a balanced life. So we are always obviously a proponent of that here at Hounds Town, and we work through different challenges that are presented to us, whether it's with humans or with with dogs.
Well, we're all living creatures, and we share so many things in common. So we're living creatures. Domestic dogs are domesticated, so we all share all these things. Thankfully, this coronavirus hasn't affected animals. Or if they did, in a very, very, very tiny minority. So we're chugging along. We're doing, and I want to just let our franchisees know, we, at one of our locations, we had record-breaking daycare 2 weeks, in 20 years. Our Farmingdale location had 44 daycare on a Saturday, which we've never had in the history of
Hounds
on
a Saturday. That was a record. So that says a huge amount, I think, about our brand and our industry and our business, that we can have these record-breaking days, and it just proves that people do need pet care. They want pet care. They need it. Their dogs need it. The routine may have changed significantly, but we're seeing everything really get back into the old swing of things. Our daycare here in Ronkonkoma is back up to about 70% capacity. So we're happy to ride out the storm and make adjustments as we really needed to. But our main focus remained on what is the best thing for the dog. And then secondly, what is the best thing for our staff and for our customers? And let's focus on that. And that is really what has helped get us through this whole challenging time, right?
I'd like to put the staff ahead of the dogs, but you're a little
well, they
bit
come like they're together. They're
right.
in the same.
But we've had it in our
wavelength.
staff. Let's just do that, though. Let's talk about our staff. Our staff wanted to come to work. They wanted to interact with dogs because we know dogs are therapeutic. So, and some of our staff was a little concerned, or they had some family members. So, of course, we respect that. But by and large, what do we talk about? Dogs are therapeutic. So our staff didn't want to be home watching CNN or Fox News. They wanted to be here with dogs and take their mind off all the crazy shit that's happening in our world.
And I think, a lot of our staff, they needed their routine. They wanted to see their colleagues. They didn't want to upset their life, and they felt a dedication to continuing to come to work for the dogs and the customers that rely on us. And they saw it firsthand. We'd had customers come into our lobby in tears telling us, thank God you were still permitted to stay open because you're an essential business. I don't know what I would have done without you. So they see that, and they understand how much of a difference they're making by coming to work.
Right. And if you're interested, go on our Facebook pages. You'd be shocked by the amount of people that it is moving, it is emotional. They were so grateful that we didn't close because they understand it's essential for their dogs to come. Not all dogs. You have a 10-year-old dog that's a couch potato. That's not essential. But if you have a 1-year-old dog that needs to burn off energy, it's the only place to do it. It's even done normal times, not during a COVID time, every day. So people sometimes look at doggy daycare as either a luxury or they're reluctant to do it. And that's really surprising to me because your dog, it's not a luxury for your dog. They'd rather be here, very frankly, news alert for you wonderful people out there. Your dog would rather be at Hounds Town than with you.
Well, not all the time.
All right, I'm only kidding. All right, this has been a long...
I think they like to be just like us humans, right? We have children, and they like to be... it's great for the kids to go out, go to school, come home, and spend quality time with parents, right? An hour or 2 or 3 at night. But when we're all together 24/7, that goes for the dog too. Everybody needs to have their own life. And sometimes that thought process gets overlooked for the dog. Yeah. And that is what we've always advocated for.
I think you made that point very clear, Jackie. You're right. So it's think of your dog's needs first.
Right. Sometimes that's what you have to do when you get a pet. That's your obligation as a pet owner. Right. So, all right. Any parting words of wisdom? No. Just on that last note, the people that are fostering dogs now or adopted dogs, this is something you have to take into consideration now. Now you got this wonderful dog. It kept you company, and a lot of people did it for the right reasons. A lot of people did it for selfish reasons. They adopted a dog or fostered a dog for a shelter just to keep themselves needs met, the human needs met for this 2, 3, 4, however many months. But when this ends, don't forget, now just don't send your dog back to the shelter, and understand that it has its needs too. So that's more important. You come to your local Hounds Town, USA. Right. Let the dog have the chance to be a dog as you get back into your routine. Of course. And don't be selfish. Continue to meet the dog's needs. So that's what we would encourage everybody to do as we get back to work here. Hump, jump, and dump. Not you, the dog at Hounds Town, USA. Okay. Yeah, please don't come here and do it yourself. All right. We're just going to sign off. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, all your other typical podcast platforms. Thanks for checking in. Let us know if anybody has any questions we can answer on next week's podcast. Any behavioral issues as we move into the spring. All right, see everybody next time. Shout out to Joan and Tom Sullivan down in Beverly Hills, and I don't mean California. All right, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everyone.